Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, which works really well for the show, actually. I'm very delighted that you are joining me today. I'm actually recording this on the very last day of Passover. So happy Passover to everybody and really a wonderful life to all the rest. You know, many of us are born into a world, into a family where there's lots of love and there's lots of warmth. And there is a sense of sanity within the home on one level or another. And we grow up and we're not always conscious of that. Maybe perhaps later on in life, we become very grateful for what we have, knowing what the kid down the street's life was like. And then there are those children who grow up in a home where maybe they break up and the parents break up and it's not a good one. Maybe there's a dynamic within the home, another child who's obstreperous, a word my mother used to use a lot, and makes that environment very difficult for other children. There are so many dynamics within our upbringing, within the world in which we grow and are born into, that we have to manage them as best as we can. And then there are dynamics that we are simply not in control of. And those dynamics, sometimes a lack of love, sometimes a lack of warmth and embrace, can have such an effect on us that our life goes lahafuch, as they say in Hebrew. It goes the opposite way of what we want, the opposite way of society, the narrative within society, which is we grow up, we get educated, we fall in love, we get a job, and we go from there. Yes, with the struggles of life. But there are individuals within our world, many, whose suffering is so great because of such dynamics as children that they go off the tracks, as we say. Now, often over time, through help and assistance, and through gaining an understanding of the tools in life that we need to succeed and to do well with, those people find their way back, if you will. One of those people is a friend of mine. His name's Colin White, and he's here with us today. Colin, how are you?
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Avrum.
Would you say that I described your life accurately? In other words, it started without the tools, the dynamics, the warmth that you needed as a kid?
Yeah, I can say that's true. I think that, when you speak about dynamics and how diverse they can be, there is no end to that. And I've always told, people that I speak with that you can come from the most loving family and be nurtured with everything that you need or everything that your soul needs and still end up where I ended up. So I never really understand how things go the way they go, but they do get there. They just, one choice kind of changes what happens after. But it was accurate as far as I'm concerned, like my life. Absolutely.
Your parents were divorced or separated when you were 3 years old.
Yeah, that's correct.
You found yourself smoking at 6 years old, which is, that image is phenomenal to me. So something went wrong, right?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't going right, for sure.
What they sat you down and they said to you, Colin, it's got nothing to do with you. And then subsequently the family split. Your dad was in Ottawa, your mom was in Montreal. What would you say was the core, the essence of what went wrong?
In my life?
For you, that your life ended up the way it was for many years, and we'll get into that in a second.
Okay. I have always believed that with the disease model, which is the one I subscribe to, which is where sometimes we say, don't hate the addict, hate the addiction, things like that. I believe there's a genetic factor to what happens in my life because of my mother's, undiagnosed mental issues when I was a kid. and then diagnosed. I think that, there's a lot of our parents that are in our very beings, obviously. And as much as I spent most of my life running away, especially, from being young to say my mid 30s, running away from the idea that I'll never be anything like my mother, it turns out I am very much like my mother. And I suffered on the inside and not on the outside. So everything was a big show for me.
How are you like your mom?
I have a history of mental health that I didn't know until I was in my 40s.
Yeah.
My mother was not diagnosed until she was in her 30s. It's, the timing doesn't matter, but it's still the same kind of story. There was a whole period of denial in her life, denying that there was any kind of issue. For her, it was an eating disorder. For me, it was a behavior disorder, hyperactivity, spurts of energy, and then always having to misbehave, let's just say, always having to do something in front of a crowd so that it would cause as much attention as possible, but in the negative. So there will always be some kind of punishment. Looking back, it's almost like I wanted to be disciplined or wanted to be punished. Mm-hmm. And the way they punished us back then was not how they do it now. It's very different.
Very different. What would happen in your head, or what are the demons in your head today that you've learned how to fight? What's that voice in your head telling you when you went through those bouts of mental illness?
My voice now, is it more like as in what do I understand about it now, or today when these things happen?
There are times where I will I'll spiral.
Yeah.
And I'll start speaking against myself to myself.
Okay.
I'm a piece of shit. There's no way I can do this. I don't deserve the love that I'm getting from my friends and family. That's the voice that can happen in my head. And it does sometimes happen. I smoke marijuana.
Okay.
And it happens often when I have edibles. So I have to be very careful with that. What's the voice in your head? What did it tell you, or what are you fighting today to make sure that voice is muted?
The voice in my head is active. I mean, it's active. It's the thing is, I put nothing in my system. So I'm now completely abstain from anything, so I don't drink, I don't smoke. I don't do pot. I don't eat edibles. I don't. That's a personal choice for me. Anything else you can think. I don't do fentanyl. I don't. I'm going to for hip surgery at some point. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to be dealing with that. It's going to hurt. So there may be some kind of medication. The voice in my head is a disciplinary voice. It tells me to misbehave. It tells me to behave differently, to act out emotionally. It tells me that the easiest way would be to lash out at someone who loves me. That's not normal, or maybe it is normal, but people don't admit it. But it's not normal for me, because I know that the real Colin, the real me, is just someone who loves to be loved and has a lot of affection. I'm a very emotional man. I have no issues displaying honest emotions to my fellow man or woman. But I judge myself so very harshly. So, it happens today. I'm going to be, June 1st will be 3 years, 100% clean.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, it is an accomplishment for sure. It's more important to me that I show new people that this is possible, hopefully. But yeah, the mental, I want to say bullshit. I don't know if that's something you can say on your
show. You can swear to your heart's delight.
Yeah, it's bullshit. The bullshit I put myself through. In fact, I call this here the itty bitty shitty committee. And there's like a whole, it's true. It's like there's a whole bunch of people, like a committee that tells me like, okay, let's lash out now. It's you have school. You have to be there at 9 a.m. It's 2:30. There's only 4 more episodes of this Netflix show. I mean, it may seem a little boring, but that's the extent of how bad my behavior gets, is I might just binge a show. But, I'm not in a crack house binging.
Can you follow that thread backward? Do you know why it is that you lash out? We know you do, but why?
Okay. I can. It will go back to my childhood, though, if I go all the way back.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So at some point when my parents divorced, I remember I was very, very young, about three years old. I can remember my mother. I always picture myself like lying down on a bed when I see things. So I remember seeing plates being thrown across the kitchen while she was screaming at my father. And my father was always, calm down. But my mother ended up getting full custody of me. She told a lie, and she said that, you know, my father was abusive. And so for a few years that worked, and she got me, but it was out of pure spite. And at some point she recanted, and there was joint custody. But my mother and we moved to an area called NDG in Montreal, to Summerled and Monkland, around there. It's basically the ghetto. It's the worst place. And we lived in poverty, below the poverty line. And so right from when I was a child, I have nothing but strange memories that I'm not sure are my own, obviously, until I talked to someone. I wasn't really sure these are my memories, but I can remember lying in bed, my mom saying, "Good night, close your eyes, go to sleep now." She slams my door, and the ceiling falls down all over me. So my perception was that I was always living in squalor and shit. There were always bugs, you know. She had all these boyfriends around that would abuse her and me. But here's an interesting thing on perspective. So looking back, I've spoken to my mom. A lot of stuff she won't admit to. But when I talked to her about the ceiling falling down, so a kid's perspective is different than an adult's, right? But I have these night terrors still about things falling down from the sky.
What'd your mom say?
It was paint. There was pieces. We moved into a really shitty apartment, and the paint was hanging off the ceiling in layers like that. And when she closed the door, some of it fell on my bed that night, and I was terrified. And I said, "Mommy, the ceiling's falling down."
What did she say?
She said, "I'm sure it's fine. Just go to bed." She swept the paint off the bed, and that's all it was. I believe that to be true. But unfortunately, I'm a person that was ruled by fears and lived by those fears and reacted to those fears and saw a threat everywhere around me. Right from, you know, it depends how deep you want to go, but there's, you know, I was sexually abused at a very early age.
By whom?
Someone in my mother's building. You know, someone related, you know, it's almost like a cliche, you know, this person was a clergy person, you know. All the kids were hanging around. He'd always leave his apartment door open, so we'd race around. An undisciplined kid, and something happened there. And that's the first time that I, you know, that beautiful honesty as a child.
Yes.
You have,
yes.
Like, I fell down, it hurt. I'm hungry. You know, these, like, we have this raw honesty as children. And for me, at some point, this thing just kind of molded into this like lump down to the bottom of my stomach. And I can remember it changing. And now I had to start keeping secrets and lying. And from that day forward, like, everything changed. I can pinpoint it down where I decided that it's not good to be scared of anything. So you punch first, you know, apologize later. No, if you feel a threat, you attack.
How old would you have been?
At that point, I was probably like 6.
6 years old.
For the first one, yeah.
Colin, have you gone back and visited that little boy?
Yeah. I've
What
done a lot of
was that
regression
like?
therapy.
What was that like?
That was really emotional. And the way I had to do it was through, it was like a relaxing sort of, I don't think it's hypnosis, but it's almost meditative.
Yeah.
It was done with like weird sounds and stuff. And I was supposed to go back to that boy, and I was supposed to sort of forgive that boy. But I don't think that boy ever did anything wrong. That's the problem, right? So I've always been battling with the whole thing with that anyway.
I'm surprised at that narrative, because usually what happens is the regret or going back, and it's to embrace the little boy, to pick him up, to tell him you love him and that he's okay. Now,
yeah, because he's safe, right?
It means he's safe, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. You tell me your story, and my tears are my eyes are welling up, because I see you as a little boy, and what you're saying is very true. That, I'm sorry, it's just so emotional for me to hear this, and obviously you're triggering something in me too. I was very lonely as a child, very lonely. You know, I didn't get embraced and hugged the way I needed to. But I listened to your story, and I'm just so sad that you went through that. Should I be?
these are your feelings. You know what I
No,
mean? I
no,
mean,
no. My feelings are granted, but at
yeah,
this point in time, when I look at you, should I see that little boy, or should we move on?
you can see the little boy. I'm cool with it. Yeah. I mean, everything I'm talking about today would be my perception. And that's the thing, right? Like at some point between, knowing that my perception is just my perception and whatever this universal truth is, lies the actual truth. But
Yes.
it's what I felt. And so for me, it's real. And that's how it was. I mean, the things that I know 100% are the, things changed when the sexual abuse started drastically. I can remember even before that, my mother got me this little leather jacket, and I was walking from preschool, and I got jumped in a park and beat up by like 7 kids that were maybe 12 years old, and they took the jacket from me. So all these little things that were happening, and I make no excuses, but this is the reasoning in my head that I decided that I'm going to have to take what it is that I want, and in order to keep it, I have to have a whole bunch of it. So I could never get enough of anything. And that's the beginning portion to addiction and suffering. That's the beginning part for me. Like hoarding everything, money, candy, stealing it, jewelry. I was the person, I mean, I'd go over to friends' places and I was very easy to introduce as a friend down the street. But unfortunately, my father or my parents would get a call. Those embarrassing calls were like, Colin was over at our place today, and my pearl necklace has gone missing, and I don't know who else to ask. And I know this is the most horrifying call for a parent. And I would play the whole, I would never, I don't even know I would never do something like that. So my parents would defend me, literally to the end. And it was me. It was always me. I saw poverty. I was scared of it. I felt dirty. I felt some kind of stigma that is out there today, but I felt it back then. And it was true for me. I mean, I was abandoned in all sorts of ways by my mother. There's a day where mommy's going to work right now. She'll be back in a few hours. And she left for 6 days, and I was in an alley and I couldn't get in the apartment. I didn't know where she had been. And my father was away traveling. So
How old were you then?
I was probably 5 or 6. My friends would bring me home for dinner, and the parents were very concerned and let me stay. And I wanted to stay in the alley and wait for her. I thought it was the best thing for me to do. And they had to force me to stay. I thought I should just wait for her and she'll show up one of these days, So when she moved to England, when she upped and left, which was in her defense to get away from these abusive relationships, she admitted to me she was never happy being in Canada. She only came here for my father. And since this was done, she's going to go back to England and be closer to her parents. And as much as I only wanted to be with my father back then. I really only wanted to be with him. I made excuses to be there. I never wanted to call her when I was with him. He only had me on weekends. When she left, I was destroyed. Like she left me all over again, and that was at like 10, once we moved to Ottawa, that was it.
How did you deal with that?
Like I dealt with everything else, I guess. I just put it under the rug and acted out at school and was very, very hyper. And I think I was still a good kid. I just think that I didn't have any outlets. My father, bless his heart, thought that if he enrolled me in soccer and hockey, that this would be a really good thing because that's what other people in Ottawa were doing. But, I got kicked out of hockey for slicing someone's gum with a stick, like just slicing someone, trying to skate over their face. And, it's a horrible thing. And I don't want anybody to see me as a monster, but I was 12 years old and I had a huge anger problem. And even then I was seeing psychologists. I didn't know that's what they were. I wasn't allowed to go on field trips for school. Everybody would get ready to go to Quebec City. It would be a huge thing. They'd all start cheering. And then the teacher would just call me over here very quietly and let me know that I can still come to the school. I just can't come to the trip. And I was destroyed and embarrassed. Everybody laughed. And it was because my behavior was not to be trusted, and no parent or guardian that would go on the trip was going to feel safe watching over someone who's going to run away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a son of a travel agent, so I actually knew all the places we were going. I was just kind of an asshole.
Erwin Ellman, who was the former ombudsman for children in foster care in Ontario, especially for Native kids, told me once, and I've said this on the show before, that one of the things that can carry children through life or their growing up years is a word of authenticity and honesty from an adult when they're going through really bad times. And he expressed to me one of the things that happened to him when he was a child, that a teacher commented on what a great writer he was, commented to the class about it. And he said that was one of the things that really made him more steadfast in life. And this was in response to a question I asked him about. I remember this story about this young girl who grew up to be in one of my organization's classes. It was a homeless girl, or she had been. And when she was little, she said that she was, every morning she'd step over her inebriated mother and she'd have to go dress herself in her little dress and make her lunch. Was there ever an adult in that you remember in your growing up years, these younger years of which you speak of, who said, Colin, my God, you have a wonderful character. You know, you're so powerful in terms of your understanding of life and humankind. Like today, you mentioned before that you're much more in touch with your core. And you can even say that you were a good kid then. But do you remember an adult saying something to you that thoroughly embraced your spirit and helped you
Kind of
understand who you were?
validated, like being a
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of the times I had a lot of professional relationships with people, which is like doesn't sound like a child, but being pulled out of school, out of class, they called it the gifted program. I never really understood it, but they always told me that I was better than my behavior, and that if I could just harness what it is that ails me, which I didn't understand at the time, if I could focus on something, that I would be, very successful. Like all my report cards was, he is so smart, he just doesn't apply himself. It was always that.
Mine
But I didn't
too,
get a lot
by
of
the way.
validation. Yeah, I didn't get
Yeah.
a lot of validation. I did get a lot of encouragement. My father never stopped believing in the person I was. He's the most gentle, kind, like a loving father. He just exudes love. And what I get from him now is acceptance as well, more than that, which is even better. It was always like emotions weren't really something that we talked about. He's a very English, very British person, my father, and it's not really socially acceptable to talk about your feelings. But he saw me in pain, crying, or scared. And he always was really, really perfect at, giving me one of those character stories, or telling me that this is going to help me in the future. And I just have to trust that whatever happened today was for the best.
How do you honor your father today?
By just being authentic, completely honest. I don't reject love. I try to live the way my father originally taught me to be.
Does he see this now?
I think he does. Yeah,
He does?
I think
What
he always tells me he's enormously proud of me, and every time he does, I want to kind of choke up. It's he slammed the door on me metaphorically, and he did the right thing. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't know was happening when I was, till the end of my story. I don't know if I'm not sure if we face that stuff together later, you and I, but when I did reconnect with him, he hung up on me a few times. I was calling him collect because I was calling from jail. And I'm like, you have a collect call from, hey, Dad, it's me. And he's like, my son's dead. And he'd hang up. And eventually he answered and he said, who are you? And I'm like, it's me. And it's me, Daddy. I love you. I just wanted you to know that I'm somewhere, where I am for once. I'm in jail. And he said, there was a report made like a year ago, and the body matched your description. and someone from the courts and a lawyer called saying that they had assumed it was me, and that he had said goodbye to me long ago. And man, I was choked. I don't know what to say. I didn't know what to say, and he told me that he felt relief. I mean, when he heard that I had perished, he felt relief for the first time in a long time, because he actually knew where I was, and I'd stopped suffering.
Has he forgiven you, and have you forgiven yourself for what brought him to that point?
Yeah. I mean, my father has moved on. He lives every day to its fullest. He's in his late 70s. He has a diagnosis that's really tough. It's tough for me, and of course, it's not about me, but I always make it about me. But it's tough. It's really hard for me to accept it, because I've missed so many years. So he has Parkinson's disease now. It's a really tough diagnosis to get. There are two people that are really close to my life now that have similar diagnosis now that I care for greatly. And both are people that I would do anything for. So, my father's one of them. Another one's nearby. But he says that the past is the past. And he also tells me stories about how if he had a time machine, what he would go back and change. But he said he wouldn't change anything as far as his life is concerned. He has a wife that he loves and loves him. He has everything he could ever want. He travels, just came back from Portugal for a month. So he's living the life that he deserves.
What would he have changed? What would he have changed with his time machine?
I don't know. I think I don't think he ever answered that. I don't think he ever answered it.
Like, could he have loved you more or differently?
Wow, this guy. I mean, I'm telling you, I've never been loved like this. This man loves, and he loved me. I just wasn't having it. He was not able to love me and discipline me at the same time. To him, they were very different things. I think back then, being a codependent, which is that's what my father would have been, isn't it? The chief enabler of someone like myself, to keep forgiving, and then I keep taking until there's nothing left. And yet he still finds somehow a way to forgive me, because he feels guilty about being a father. So it's his responsibility to forgive me. That's the way he described it. Like, it was a father's responsibility to remember that you don't choose your family. This is it. I'm his only child, and I fully abused that privilege. So I don't know if he'd go back, but he did tell me one story, though. I was sleeping once on the couch, and he walked over with a pillow, and he stood over me crying for like 5-6 minutes and was trying to decide if he was going to smother me, and never did. Yeah, he told me that when I was about 17. So
how did you respond to that?
Well, it wouldn't have been. It's not a good thing. I didn't respond well.
So in your gut today, is there a lot of pain inside of you, or is a lot of that pain gone?
I'm full of regret. I can't lie about that stuff. I practiced, forgiveness. But I think when we were on the phone a couple of weeks ago talking about doing this, I think I said it for me anyway. It's a daily reprieve. I have to keep doing it. And I don't know if I'll ever be finished, but I have to keep practicing it, or else that's the talk that you asked earlier that really gets me. That's the stuff that creeps up the back of my neck and says, you're a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit. You should, you're worthless. Look at what you've done to the people around you. And then I have to try to cancel it out with a whole bunch.
Are you able to do that now more so?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
How do you do it, Colin?
Well, first I have support. So I'm not alone in anything that I do anymore. I might be alone sleeping in bed over there, enjoying a restful night's sleep when I could get it, but I'm not actually alone in this world. I believe in something bigger than me. So I have God. I have a whole support network of people in 12-step programs. I have 5 friends You know, those are my only friends. I keep the circle really small. I keep them really intimate. And I use those supports. You know, I'm 100% honest with my friends. I expect the same in return. I have an amazing girlfriend. For some reason, she loves me too. So, you know.
Why does she love you?
Oh man, we fell in love when I was like 17.
Well,
So
what did she love about you?
gosh, I don't know.
No, tell me, what did she love about you?
My spirituality. I think it was my spirituality. No, I was 17 years old. So and she, you know, she introduced me to you know, American Indian spirituality, and or indigenous here it would be. And you know, she changed my life. And you know, I met her. She was a runaway in Minnesota. This is like crazy tale. I hope I'm not boring your viewers here, but this is like,
no,
this is how full circle works. Okay. So I got in a bar fight. I got charged with assault. I was just under the age of adulthood. So I was still a young offender. I was brought before a judge. And I had heard that if I said I was an alcoholic, that I might get lenience. And it completely backfired. They shipped me off to Minnesota. And I went, it wasn't a backfire. It was the greatest thing ever. But they shipped me off to Minneapolis, Minnesota, to a hospital where it's locked. You cannot leave for the first 28 days. It's called the evaluation unit. I mean, this is the equivalent of a psych ward, you know, and like, just like in the 30s when AA was started, when people drank too much, it was considered insanity. You ended up in a psych ward. That's what Bill W. was talking about. So I ended up there. I didn't need her there though, but because they were making so much money off OHIP, there were no treatment centers in Ontario back then. It was probably costing upwards of $60,000 a month to send someone like me there. Once the 30 days was over, they moved me to an extended care called in Woodbury, Minnesota. And it was a gigantic wood cabin that had like 38 bedrooms in it. I think the females were downstairs, slept downstairs. Guys were on the top floor. There was a pool. I mean, it was crazy. But it was a wonderful property. There was a sweat lodge on there. There were native elders that came to do all sorts of workshops and healing circles and talking circles. And I got out of the van and I saw this. I just saw her. And I'd never seen anyone like her in my life. And
How so?
She's just gorgeous. Like I've never seen, I never spent any time being interested in people because I was so selfish, you know, so I never really looked out. I was too busy hoarding and behaving badly. But when I saw her, I froze. And I remember the guy saying, come on, let me show you where you're going to live. And I was like, yeah, of course. Sure. She was sitting there smoking a Marlboro and she just long black hair, like way down her back, you know, and her name's Lynn and she's her Lynn Braveheart. Like, and sorry for the anonymity, honey, if you're watching.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, we met there. And, you know, it's forbidden to have any kind of relationships in a treatment center, especially if it's a co-ed thing. That's a license for, you know, disasters.
But you got your first kiss there.
Pretty much. Yeah. Like there was like, we did camping trips. They did all sorts of things that were a little more geared towards younger people, I guess, trying to show us values and stuff. And I can remember the most of it was really, I touched her hand a couple of times.
Yes.
And it was like electricity. I was, you know, so most people were going to prom and doing all these things. And I was, you know, I'm learning to be in relationships in a treatment center. And that's, you know, that's the difference between my life and what I called normal people.
Yeah.
I wasn't interested in school. I quit school every time. I wasn't into school, you know, it's different today, but I had no interest in education. I found it boring, unchallenging. I got my education by going to treatment centers and I went to a great many of them. So Lynn and I, we met there. We were warned, you know, there are no relationships, no touch, no problem. So we'd sneak around, but it wasn't really sneaking. I'd be sitting on a bench and my hand would be a little bit over this way and it would kind of try to make my pinky over to hers.
Yeah.
But it was so innocent, you know, and, you know, after I was there about 6 months or so, and then they, you know, it felt like they tore us apart. They one day they came and grabbed her and took her somewhere else. She went to a boarding school, and that was it. And so I had just, you know, that was it. I didn't really. I only saw her once. I kept in touch. She really introduced me to spirituality and to a lot of the beliefs I have today. and the native elders that would come and do work. And, I was really into the sweat lodge, and I started becoming a firekeeper, cooking the grandfathers, like basically keeping the stones really, really warm. And I developed like a sort of accountability. I had to be there every Thursday to do this and build the fire. And it just nurtured my soul at a really young age. And when I left, there was a hole, there was a hole. I missed her so much. We had a few long talks over the phone and stuff, but then, she ended up in a boarding school, and you know how the boarding school thing works. So it wasn't a good scene for her. And
were you did you know how to love her?
This is brand new. I guess I knew it was real. That's all, but I couldn't tell you why back then.
Were you able to look into her eyes? Were you able to say words of embrace? Were you
Yeah.
able to hold her when you guys were by yourselves? Did you know somewhat how to love?
I mean, I watched a lot of movies. I mean, honestly, no one really taught me any of this stuff. I just knew that this was pure because it wasn't necessarily physical all the time for me. I felt this nurture from her words.
How did she love you?
Well, she loved me by expressing, teaching me. She taught me about what I call spirituality today. She introduced me to, like, Lakota beliefs and traditions, and I couldn't. I was eating it all up, and it's not necessarily because of her, because it was because the message was so pure back then. It felt so real. Was it really love? Yes, for sure. But the only reference I had of love other than that was, mom and dad, right? So I knew it was a different kind of love. I knew we were not going to be able to be physical together. I also didn't really understand what that works anyway. I didn't understand that stuff anyway. I'm a late bloomer. But when she left, when she got torn basically to go somewhere else, basically because of this behavior, I felt horribly guilty. We really barely only just touched fingers and stuff, but I got to see her again about a year and a half later. It was amazing.
What happened then?
Went to Thunder Bay for my birthday. Friend of mine from treatment lived in Thunder Bay, and we drove to International Falls. And she came with a native elder and a few other ladies, and they came to International Falls, and I got to like hug her and kiss her, and we banged foreheads. It was the most awkward kiss in the world. I think I hit my teeth against her teeth. Like it was, if I could just no more, and but that was it. It was a brief second, and then I didn't see her for 30 years.
For 30 years.
That's it. And I went through hell.
You were in touch with her though?
There was every once in a while. We were Facebook friends, and but it wasn't much, and there was no expression of love or anything.
Okay.
After our phone calls and stuff, they abruptly ended. I mean, she moved on with her life. That's life. I didn't understand that, but I ended up falling into what I fell into in my own way. I never really moved on.
We are celebrating a very big day today, right? Prior to this interview, you sent me an email.
Oh my gosh.
To the effect that a letter you had sent a judge asking him basically for a reprieve, from probation, and I'm assuming at some point in time eradicating your sentences so that you can go stateside, you can go to the States and see Lynn. Anyways, that call or that letter came today. You want to walk us through that?
Sure. Yeah, the letter, or just the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, tell us whatever you think is important to the context of your life.
Okay, so part of my story, is before this 3 years started, right? I woke up the day before June 1st. So I woke up in jail. I sort of knew I had done wrong, but it was like a plethora of charges. Like I had, they call it an orgy of evidence when it's it's a slam dunk case like that. And so I was homeless. And another homeless person and I suppose, near Exhibition Village had committed a couple crimes, I guess all in the name of finding some money to support my habit, but, being the world's worst criminal, which I'm actually quite proud of that. So I'm cool with that. I don't want to be a great criminal. Was arrested within, 3 or 4 minutes of the crime. Like, it was epically fast. I woke up in jail. I did not qualify for bail. I have a very long criminal history. And so I don't qualify for any kind of bail with the kind of charges I have in my past. And so they have enhanced bail programs and different people they help you. It's like a third party, but you still have to answer to them and report to them every day if you're as bad as I am at keeping commitments back then. And even they turned me down. But when I woke up in jail, they asked me if I wanted to run a contested bail hearing. And I said, why not? Let's roll the dice. But really what I wanted was to stay in jail. I was tired of living this way, and I was hoping I could just sleep it off and get healthy. And we ran the bail hearing, and the judge reprimanded me for like 20 minutes and then released me. And I was terrified. I had nowhere to go. But these charges were pretty serious. And I ended up heading over to Oshawa to Cornerstone, which is, I don't know if anybody here has ever been there. I hope not. But I will say that of all, shelters are some of the worst places to go if you're trying to actually get help. That's the hardest part about the system right now, is that if I want help, the worst place I can go is a place that's funded to be a shelter, because it's very violent, So I got there, and I was very proud of myself. I stayed sober all the way there, and this is like earth shattering for me, because I was doing upwards of like a half ounce of fentanyl a day at this point. And I was really, really sick. I got clean on my own. I wasn't going to stay that way for long. I needed to get to a detox. The story's going to get longer, I guess. So I go to detox, and on the way to detox, I walked past this little Christian place where they feed the homeless. They just give you breakfast and coffee and stuff. And I actually had never felt the power of prayer before. And I told these guys, I'm on my way to detox. Can I just get a little coffee and a cigarette, please? And they said, can we pray for you? And I remember they all put their hands on me. There were like 6 of them. And they prayed for it was like a 2-minute thing. And I felt really dizzy. I know I wasn't dope sick at this point, but that was part of it. But I felt energy all over my body. It was I had never felt this kind of thing before. And I look back and I think it's some kind of act of providence that I made it to this detox. And I'm dragging a suitcase behind me. And I swear there's nothing in the suitcase. I'm dragging an empty suitcase, which is just, I don't need a suitcase. There's nothing to put in it. That's where my head was, right? Just get there. And I got there, I was 104 pounds, 105 pounds. And they let me through the door, and I refused to leave until I could find somewhere to go. And from there, I went to a crisis bed, and I stayed there for 2 months until I got back into treatment. Right here, until I got to treatment. And everything from that moment on was a miracle. I know it's a really long journey and hard to do, but this was completely doable. I was just honest. I think I cried every day. I cried maybe multiple times a day. I didn't give a shit about my ego anymore. I was just so desperate to just, it's not to die, but I'm so desperate to learn how to live. I think that was the hardest part. That I would follow any suggestion, and I would do it by the book. And this is like the first time that I would follow rules to the letter and create a treatment plan for myself that I can follow even today. I just do the same thing. I'm one of those guys. If I go to a diner that the food's really good, I get the same meal every time. That's how I am with my sobriety. I don't divert. I might change things around a little bit and replace things, but I don't move off the path. I know exactly what happens when I go that way. I know what happens if I go that way. I go this way, and that's it. And I do it the honest way. And, it's working for me. I mean, it's working well for me. I'm very happy. But I was told I was going to go to jail for 4 years for these charges. So there was possession of, I don't even know how this stuff happens to me, but I'm always involved in the wrong stuff at the time. That's what addiction will do. So possession of a motor vehicle, and then in the back, just my luck. And it just had nothing to do with stealing the car because I was a passenger. But in the back were 10 boxes of brand new iPads. And the cop, and I'm not laughing because it's a serious crime, but I'll tell you in a second why. The cop opens up the thing, and this part I can remember because I'm really dizzy. He picks me up by my neck, my shirt, and I'm like, oh, it's the only way I can stand up. And he's like, we're charging you with these. And I said, don't you think if I knew these were here, I would have tried to make some money so I can buy some drugs, you know? So they believed me that I didn't know about that. It just happened to be, you know, a terrible day for addiction and mental health and pro-criminal behavior. So I was looking at those 4 years, and then I was looking at 3 years. And in my head, anything over 2 years less a day is provincial jail. Anything under, I mean, is 2 years less a day. It's a little bit easier. If you go over, if it's three years or 1 day plus, that's federal penitentiary type stuff. And that's something I've never done. So I spent lots of time in jail, but I didn't want to go back. But there's nothing I can say to a judge that's going to, you know what I mean, that's going to change what they want to do, because I can only be honest and say I really need help. So my lawyer said, just keep doing what you're doing and I will go to court for you. We'll just keep putting it off for a little while. And then I made it to a year sober, and it was like 160 people showed up to this room, and I got this coin, and I cried in front of a lot of people. It was probably one of the most amazing nights of my life. And, you know, remembering how people at the shelter were stealing my shoes, and I was walking around with like one sock on the street trying to ask for water during COVID of all times. And so just utterly grateful. And I started calling the treatment center where I was in treatment, where I'd gone twice in 2 years, and told them that I wanted to work there. And, you know, they said I had to be 3 years sober. And I said, come on. And I called them every day. I just kept calling the manager every day. And I said, please, there's got to be something I could do. I just want to work and get paid and be sober and help others. And I want to be a counselor. And they made some exception, I guess. And he said, he complimented me on my fortitude. That's not something that happens to me. You know, I don't get complimented for my fortitude.
You're tenacious.
It's either called harassment, but to me, it was fortitude. So I thought it was really nice, good sign. And I became the overnight counselor at Renaissance in Whitby, the one in Whitby. And this place, you know, there's something about it that's just, you know, I love that place. You
Why?
know, they could pay me $1 and I'd still work there. You know?
Why do you love it?
Well, the staff. I think it's the staff that's what makes it.
What do they like?
Everybody has a different discipline or a different personality. So like my sponsor works there. He's amazing. His name's Giuseppe. He practices like reality therapy, which is something I still quite not understand. I just know it's been done on me a few times. There are psychotherapists there. There's a 12-step model. Everybody has different sort of strengths.
But what are these people like?
They're the nicest people, honestly.
Are they nice? They're nice?
Yeah.
They're kind?
Well, I couldn't stand them when I was in treatment the first time. But coming back, being desperate to change, I noticed that that's not, I made a lot of judgments without actually getting to know people. I didn't like people telling me that I can't eat past a certain hour or no caffeine after 2 p.m. I mean, what's that? When you're an addict, you need stimulant, right? So I wondered why these rules were there, why we had to do chores. You know, I wasn't thinking about how grateful I am to the board who put me through for free because I didn't stand a chance and didn't have any money. They took me from CAMH and shelters, and they brought me here and de-bed bugged me and put new clothes on my body and fed me 3 times a day. I didn't think about that stuff. I only thought about, why are these guys calling me dishonest? You know, I'm telling them the truth. At least I thought I was, you know. they kept looking at me like they could see right through me,
Mm-hmm.
and it drove me absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But they were right. The interesting thing about, addicts or people is that, we're all similar. There are different types of addicts, but the personalities can sort of be the same. I can say for myself, I was a thieving, violent, dishonest, self-seeking, selfish. I mean, these are all normal qualities of an addict. Doesn't make us bad people. This is just, like you said earlier, it's not a character flaw. It's addiction is what it is. It exists.
Well, Dr. Gabor Mate, who's very well known in that industry, he said that is a response to human suffering. And I think in your case,
Right.
that is true.
Yeah.
Just tell us about the letter you got today, the email you got.
I knew there was something I forgot.
Yeah, take
I
us
was going
there.
to ask you, what's the actual question?
No, Colin, what you're telling us it's beautiful. It's gold. It's really important to hear. So I don't want to cut you off, but take us to that email you received today.
Okay, so I got a text from my probation officer. Please call me. Now, that's not usually a good thing.
No.
But I have such a great relationship with her, and which is also new for me because I'm, probation officers, they're just oversight. They're just there to help. I always saw them as the enemy because it's responsibility and accountability. But I gave her a call, and she let me know that this pretty long letter that I wrote to the judge, asking if I could, commute it, sort of reduce the sentence instead of having years and years of probation, which I was already grateful because I'm not going to jail. So it's hard to ask for more. But I felt if I told my story, maybe he'll remember me, because he was really impressed that I was working in a treatment center by the time I had pled guilty. Anyway, he said yes. So he wrote to the PO, the probation officer, and said, absolutely. It's as of today. And whenever you receive this, it's done. Request approved. And please tell Colin that I wish him, my very best. Please send him my very best regards. And yes, I remember him, or something. Yeah.
I'm so happy for you, buddy.
I don't know what it changes, but I feel hope, I'd like to be able to visit her.
You can visit Lynn now?
I don't know. Not yet.
Is she married? Is she married?
She has been. Yeah.
But
she's
is she married now?
No. I stay away from that kind of stuff.
So good for you.
Yeah.
So you can actually hook up with her again.
Yeah. She contacted me right before, I think it was like December 6th, maybe 5 months before my 1 year. She sent me a message. I was living in a sober home in Pickering here, and I posted a picture of a cute dog on Instagram, and I didn't know she was following me, and she just wrote "cute dog" in the message, and I saw the message, and I put my phone down, and then I looked at the message again. I looked at the name, and I felt like someone had kicked me in the stomach.
Yeah,
I had so many feelings, and I thought, this can't be healthy. I was told that anything that makes you feel this way, you run the other way. Relationships in early recovery are kind of, they're not frowned upon, but they're not recommended for the reason we're supposed to be working on ourselves. So I waited, and we just talked on the phone and stuff.
What was that like?
Waiting or talking?
What was it talking like after 30
All I
years?
did was write. I was like, it's you. She said yes. I gave her my number. I said, call me now. And she called me right away, and she said, you have the same voice. And I was like, okay, is that good? I'm not exactly feeling confident, but I was just talking to her feels like I'm home. I had my eyes closed most of the time, and it doesn't matter what happens. When I look at her, I still see, that's what I see. I see her exactly the same as I saw her the first day. We're both not those people, but that's what I see. She could be 1,000 years old. To me, she's like the most beautiful woman in the world.
Where is she at with you?
She likes me a lot. She calls me her so proud of her handsome man.
Do you love each other?
Yeah, we love each other.
You're in love with her?
I'm head over heels in love with her. Yeah.
And
She left 2 days ago. Yeah.
well, she was there?
She comes here every 5 weeks.
Oh, you've seen her?
Oh yeah, I've seen her. Yeah, yeah. She waited about in May, the following May. We planned a trip for her to come. And we were both really, really nervous.
Can I ask you an intimate question?
Sure.
What was it like when you first made love to her?
Whew. That was crazy.
Awesome, no?
There was no nerves at that time. The moment was there, and I've never felt anything like it.
Yeah.
I've obviously been in relationships, but and I always told her I never gave a shit about anybody else I was with, and I'm not trying to put anybody down. I was so into what I was doing, or my work, or anything but a relationship, that I just didn't care. It was like a status symbol to be in a relationship. I look at Lynn, and she's home. She's perfect. She's the woman I've been waiting for, and I've been in love with since I was 17.
So explain to me what that means, that you have like authentic love. Like, what would you do for her that you wouldn't have done in previous relationships?
Wow. Well, I would be honest with her. I give her myself. That's the honest me. I'm not afraid to be vulnerable with her.
And she likes your honest self.
She does. She thinks I'm hysterical. She thinks it's funny.
Does she?
She's like, I don't know if it's like I just say what's on my mind, and that can be very jarring for some people.
Yeah.
So my friends and my circle of friends they appreciate. I try to, have friends who understand that this is who I am.
Yeah.
If I hold things in, it becomes toxic. But I do know how to keep good manners. But I just say what's on my mind,
and you must like yourself now as well.
Yeah, I absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So she
I
likes
like
you,
myself
and
a
you
lot
like
more. Yeah.
She
There's a
likes
lot
you.
of love. I love myself.
There's a lot of love in your life, and you have your 5 friends.
Yeah, I probably have more, but I mean, I always say keep the circle small, because
Manageable.
I don't know if it's a control thing for me, because I know I'm a bit of a control freak, but I also know that I can't control anything. It's the great illusion of life, acceptance.
Colin, you're an entertainer. You've produced music for Taylor Swift. You've done some pretty awesome stuff in life. I know you from way back through my friend Ellie, and I met you at his house, and then you came to my house. We had a birthday dinner or lunch for Ellie. It was at that time that you went into my medicine cabinet. You took some Xanax of mine, and by the way, I told you this before the interview. No, Colin. I was walking today and I was thinking about you taking my Xanax. I was thinking about how am I going to respond to that in the interview. And you know what occurred to me? What occurred to me is good. I'm happy it was there for you, because you were physically suffering so badly. I know you only took 2 Xanax, and I'm thinking you probably should have taken more. But I'm going to ask you a question on behalf of my son. I told my son, who's 18 years old.
Okay.
Thank God, he's my gift.
Wow.
And he asked me, I told him about this interview, and he asked me to ask you, what was it like to steal?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question.
Yeah. Because you stole a lot. You stole from Ellie, even though he was so loving to you, right? And he's more than forgiving you. He adores you. Ellie adores you. He really does. Ellie told me yesterday that he's probably the kindest person that I know, which is what you've written as well.
Yeah.
And he gives people 1 chance, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and you just kept stealing from him.
5, yeah. I know.
You stole like a laptop. You stole like 3 cell phones.
Yeah, I took his camera,
and then you helped him look for it.
I know the joke, and that's actually what happened too.
That's fucked up.
That is fucked up.
So my son wants to know, you're stealing those pearl necklaces, right? You're stealing from Ellie. What's that like at the moment?
Oh man, it's gonna sound horrible, but in the moment, there's only, if you're truly in the present moment, there's only that task and nothing but. But there's something on top of it that's even more important, and that's the story that the act itself is one thing, and then there's the lie that you have to sell, and a lot of us, I keep saying, a lot of us actually think that we're amazing liars. Maybe we're good actors, but we're not always as good as we think. But we have to sell it to the point where we believe it ourselves. And I think that a lot of the time, there's different kinds of theft that I've done in my life. I mean, the Ellie stuff is really painful for me. I was crying when you brought it up. And I thought, geez, he's not going to bring Ellie up. I love this man so much, and I have nothing but such admiration for the guy.
He adores you, right?
I fucking love him too, man.
Yeah, he adores you. Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what's going on. Even when I'm stressed, he's like, do you have time for a joke?
Yeah.
I need, of course I have time. It doesn't matter.
Did he call you in jail once? Or he visited you in jail and he said, you want to hear a joke?
Yeah.
And that was a big deal to you.
Wish I could remember the joke.
Honestly, well, he's got so many. But that was a big deal for you, wasn't it?
He was there for me. Yeah.
Because telling someone a joke is really giving them, because you're waiting for their response, Yeah,
he was amazing. He came to me, and we could only see each other digitally. So he's downstairs in front of a camera, and I'm up in my range in front of a little camera. So I only see this little Ellie, and he's there, always there with his suit and going about his business, just popping by the jail, and this work that I'm doing, I do with Ellie or for Ellie, or we work together. I do a lot of writing, and some of the stories, some of that, like, I love telling stories, and I really like putting names to some of the people that perished in the Holocaust, and being able to do this work is so fucking rewarding. Like I love writing, and I think that it's really important to, I think everybody needs to have their story told, and it should never be forgotten. Yes. And he's turned me on to this. And I realized that I had been doing this long before, even when I was doing drugs. I was doing this stuff with Ellie. My writing was probably pretty terrible because I don't remember any of it, but I would nod off in the middle of work, and he'd be like, hey, how we doing?
Yeah.
But this work is super important. And, I just think Ellie is super important for this world, man. Like, there's no one like him, He's a good friend. He's a really good friend. But let me tell you, stealing is I never answered that properly, but it comes too easy, stealing, and it should be harder. That's the problem with it. Stealing is for shortcuts, and it always brings you somewhere where you're going to end up doing, for me anyway, myself, it takes me somewhere where I'm going to end up doing years of work to make up for it. So I learned, because of all the stealing that I've done, I used to get a rush off that. It's like drugs for me. It pumps up the neuroepinephrine and the adrenaline. I'm sober now, so if I wanted to feel a bit of a buzz, I can go to Shoppers Drug Mart and steal something, and I've done it. I did it once in sobriety, maybe a few more times. It wasn't recent, but I mean, I've done these terrible things that are against, having a good nature. And my answer is it's too easy. It's too easy to do, but the payment is you pay for it forever. That's what I have to say about stealing. There's never a good way, and it's the lie we tell ourselves that we're just borrowing and not telling them about it. That kind of thing. That's the real crime.
You're very charming. You're very bright, right? You're academically bright nowadays. You're a great writer. You probably are in your own way type A. Your IQ probably really high. How do you know nowadays, with all of that charm that you have, that you're being honest?
Wow, these are some tough questions. I've always had trouble sleeping. It's a big deal for me. Like, I don't sleep more than 2-3 hours a night. When I'm doing things when I'm being authentic, being myself, I sleep like a baby.
Yeah.
I don't have there's no reason for me to look over my shoulder. the anxiety that I know I have that's deep inside me that may have been programmed from years ago, it's a lot less when I'm doing the things I should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I know when I'm authentic, and it's a myth to think that you're authentic and things are just going to go well. But I know that I'm being honest because I know. I just know. I don't know how to explain it.
A gut feeling.
It's a gut feeling. I know
What did
that
you?
there's no real universal truth. It's only the truth as we see it, as we see ourselves in the world. So at some point, I have to reconcile, and trust that my honesty is actually honesty.
What did you do for Taylor Swift?
I I worked on some sounds. I worked on a remix. I worked on this Back to December musical bed. There was this guy, this main producer that has long since stopped working for Taylor Swift. I guess she's like massive now. She's just like a crazy, amazing icon now in the world. I think she's amazing now. But yeah, that's all I did. That's what it was. It was a quick job. I had the chance to do a lot more, and I actually spent a lot of time working in the music business, and in many ways I blew it big time. And in other ways, this is exactly what was supposed to happen. Tell you the truth, I had a really big thing, a really big contract. And I was on my way to the airport and I bought my tickets. I had my, like a registered LLC in the States, and I forgot the name of the bank, but I had, a nice credit card I could get out anywhere I need to get, and my agent would pay the tab. And I was not let into the States at Trudeau Airport. I booked a flight first class to LA, and it was an emergency. I had to be there, and it was my one shot. And I was turned down. Well, they gave me a chance to withdraw my application to the States because of my record. So, that's what happened. And
Colin,
yeah,
sorry.
I punished myself for that for years,
Yeah.
Poor me, it's my own fault anyway, but
Yeah.
These are the consequences.
Colin, you have walked outside with one shoe on and one sock. You have slept on a bench more than once. You've been in jail a number of times. You were abused as a young kid. In your mind, is that the way it's supposed to be? When you look back on your life, do you say, yeah, this is what brought me here today? Or do you say otherwise?
Sometimes I say otherwise. When I'm accepting of everything, which is like, 85% of the time, I'm saying without that, I would have none of this today.
Yes.
I wouldn't have Lynn. I wouldn't have met Lynn. Maybe those things got me to Minnesota. I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met Ellie. I wouldn't be doing important work. I wouldn't have, this job that I think I'm starting Friday. I wouldn't have the education. I wouldn't feel any compassion for people. And then there are other times, the 15% or the 14.5 where, I play the fantasy card where I go back and I change a few things, but it doesn't quite work out. So I go back and do it again.
Yes.
But I can't.
Are you a loving fellow today?
Yeah. I can tell you for sure, I'm a loyal friend. I'm an honest person. I do as much as I can to help the people around me and people that are not around me too. I do what I can, but I have to take care of my needs first. And that's It's different than it used to be. I used to think that was selfish, but it's not. It's like the thing in the plane where the oxygen mask comes out, you put it on yourself before you put it on your next. If I don't get my needs cared for, I can't do anything for anybody around me.
Where do you want to be in 3 years from now?
The United States. I'd like to be working on my master's in social work University of Minnesota. Living with Lynn would be amazing. Keep all the great relationships I have today, being able to visit home. And I want to be working, and I want to, what I really want to do is I want to be able to have this board where we give away scholarships for treatment for people who can't afford it. That's kind of where I want to go. So maybe 3-5 years I'll have that.
What's your favorite food?
Oh my gosh, burgers, cheeseburgers. I love cheeseburgers.
I see you're a real connoisseur.
I cook really, really better cuisine than I eat. Honestly,
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Yeah, I have to have someone over for that.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
What's your favorite number?
Oof. Gosh. 18. Still 18.
Why?
Weird. I was born on that day.
You know what 18 is in Jewish?
No.
It represents chai, life. It's a very big number in Jewish. Yeah, very big. Very big.
Okay.
What's your superpower?
Clumsiness. I don't know. I think my superpower is it's be able to just admit the truth. I usually come out with a joke and then I'll say, the truth is, and that's the truth.
Okay.
I think I'm not afraid of the truth anymore. What does it matter?
Are you afraid of anything?
I'm afraid of a lot less, but I'm afraid of healthy fear of losing what I have.
Yes.
Yeah, but I look around. I have exactly what I need.
Yeah, you don't need a lot, do you?
No.
I'd like you to send out a message as we wrap up to individuals who are going through what you have gone through, because we both know that there are an awful lot of people out there who are struggling terribly and who really need a word of encouragement, a word of love. So maybe you can wrap up our interview, which, by the way, you did outstandingly well. Thank you for this.
Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, you were wonderful. Send out a message to those individuals who need to hear from you, that word of encouragement.
Okay. Yeah, if you're struggling, I can tell you for sure that the struggle is real. But you're not alone. You're never alone. There's this whole illusion that we tell ourselves that we're so unique, that there's no one like us. But I tell you that there are people like you. I'm one of them. And sometimes you have to fall and you have to get right to the bottom. But just remember that bottom is progressive. So if you don't give yourself that chance today, you don't know where you're going to be tomorrow. So I can tell you for sure that this is a manageable problem, and there are manageable solutions, and that there is nothing you can't do if you actually put one foot in front of the other, ask for help and support, and you absolutely can get there. Don't believe any statistics. This is about you. You can do that. I love you.
Part B to my question.
Yeah.
I'm like my mother who could never hang up the phone. Okay, dear, I love you. I love you too, Mom. The mom and dad who are watching their child go through this suffering, send out a message to them.
Mom and dad? Wow. That's tough. I think that a lot of people may not agree with me on this, but I think the best way for someone to realize that they're going to have to figure this out is sometimes without their parents. It was for me. I had a remarkable talent for, extorting my father through guilt. And at some point he just said no and hung up and said he would change the number if I kept calling. But I wouldn't have got any of the help if I didn't go through those few years of for me it was homelessness, but it doesn't have to be. I'm just saying that you can withdraw support and not be a chief enabler and just be firm. And the best way of doing that is to look up something like CODA or something that works with codependency, that just helps families understand that the dynamic itself, the family can get through this and not depend on the child to get through it, but the child will get through it too.
You know what the beautiful thing is of your life and your struggle is you stand as a mirror to so many people, and that mirror includes the ability to work things through.
Yeah.
And that's huge. So I know both you and I, we believe in God. And I guess this is what God wanted for you.
Yeah. How are you going to argue with that?
Yeah. So I don't know. At the end of a lot of my interviews, when we talk about people's struggles, I feel great love. And I feel great love for you now. I really do. And I give you a big hug and I give you a kiss right on your forehead. And
Thanks, Avrum.
I'm just so happy that you're at where you're at. Um, and that you have managed to accomplish so much in life, Colin. You know, you've got, it's not, it's the rich, yeah, you know, yeah, they can get richer, but it's how they build themselves as a human being. You know, the poor, they can unfortunately have to suffer so much because of poverty, but still they can take their lives and make them something which represents beauty in our world. Like wherever we're at, we have to try to just go a little bit higher.
You have to.
You know what I mean? And you're not anybody else, so it's you're your challenge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're in competition with yourself, and you manage to step up, and God willing, you should always have the strength to do so. And I thank you so much, honestly, for doing this and for giving people the opportunity to hear that when life like turns into shit, right? You got to take that, man, and you got to turn around. That's what you've done. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
expressing that message, really.
I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. I'm really, really grateful to be able to tell any kind of story and see you after this long, after
Yeah, it's been a while.
preparing things, you know?
You know what we're going to do? We're going to do an interview down the road with you and Lynn.
Okay.
That would be
Awesome.
very cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. She's got a
Okay,
hell of
bud.
a story. Like, yeah.
I love you, and thank you for this. And thank you to my viewers. I'm so happy that you tuned into this show. We got a lot of great shows coming up, so stay with us. If you want to know more about my podcast, please go to YouTube, the Avrum Rosensweig Show. And I would really appreciate it a lot if you could subscribe, because on YouTube, subscribing means a lot. It means you can eventually monetize it and so many other things. So if you can help me out on that, I would be very grateful. I also do a lot of art. You can take a look at my art at avrumrosensweigart.com. And if you have any questions or want to be in touch with me, I'm at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com. Anyways, take care. I'm Yisrael Chai. The nation of Israel lives. Thank you again for viewing it, and we'll be back very soon.